Hello and welcome back to my podcast, Wikiscapes. The topic for today's discussion is architecture. Architecture is many things to many people. For some, it's the ultimate art form. For others, it's a form of science. Architecture and buildings are almost, but not quite, the same thing. There's no architecture without buildings, but architecture has taken the act of putting two bricks together well into the realm of art. Architecture has always been a continuum of art from time immemorial. Right from the days of Da Vinci, Michelangelo, to present days Frank Lloyd Wright and quite a few other architects, architecture has always been an extension of art, an art form of the highest level. And architecture is a functional art form. It's a livable space. Also could be sculpture. An ideal architecture is always a world of dreams, where architects always dream the impossible. But gradually, slowly but surely, it becomes a reality, like a sculpture emanating from below. So, what exactly is architecture? Architecture is a science of buildings, an art form that could go on beyond the realms of imagination, a world of dreams, a world of human spirit, space, and architecture has taken that much more and beyond. Vitruvius said, Utilitas, Firmitas, and Venustas. Architecture is about function, is about solidity, and it's about beauty. Aesthetics, the world of the visual appeal. Architecture is much more and beyond. So today we could just trace the evolution of architecture from each historical epoch. Every historical epoch, right from the days of the Grecian Empire to the Romanesque empires to the Egyptian pyramids, every historical epoch has had a landmark building, a structure to define its culture and civilization. Imhotep, the first architect recorded, 2630 BC in Egypt, built the pyramids. And they've deified him. And from time immemorial, from the days of the Chola dynasty in India, where the world's largest temple was built in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, huge blocks of stones raised to that level, even Tanjore, the great temple, from the temples of Hampi to Halabid, the Chola dynasty has defined architecture in its own form. And to trace the evolution, we would say we could go back in time and we know where it all started. From the walls of the Byzantine Empire, to arches and domes of the Roman civilization, to the pillars and columns of the Greek civilization, to the Indus Valley, the Harappa, the Lothal, the Mohenjo-daro, and Islamic architecture. The Japanese have what's called the metabolist architecture, the constructivism of Russia. Architecture has come a full circle. From the inverted domes to the eaves of the Japanese architecture to the stone blocks of Chola dynasty, architecture has been taken to a different level altogether. Architecture from the Colosseums to the mausoleums, to those galleries and to the art galleries, architecture has come a long way. Every civilization, every culture is defined by the buildings, by the structures that they've left behind. The timeless, the ageless beauty of those sculptures, of those structures resonate in every aspect. So we'll get down to the components, to the art, the transition from art to science. Today, how do we really break up architecture and how do we define the components of architecture? To starting with the basic plan. It's a horizontal dimension of a three-dimensional structure wherein the architect draws a plan to a scale, the walls, the windows, the doors, It defines what kind of a plan that you're about to visualize. And the next is your perspective and your elevation. Elevation would be about the fascia, the facade of a building. It will give you an idea how your building might look in real after it's shaping up slowly but surely. Perspective is a two-dimensional diagram, an axonometric projection of a three-dimensional structure, wherein the recesses, the depth, it gives you an idea of how structures are going to look in real eye, the human eye. Symmetry is to have a mirrored image of a central axis. You have two aspects and both have to be symmetrical. Next is ratio and proportion. Any building has to have a ratio. It's got to look proportionate and it's got to be built in a proportionate fashion. It's got to be balanced, it's got to be harmony. It's got to look holistic from every angle. Spread-eagled, wide-bodied buildings that look butch and brutal, to vertical skyscrapers. Different aspects of architecture has been looked into. We have what's called the golden ratio, the Vitruvian man, where Marcus Vitruvius did come about with this project of firmitas, utilitas, and vetustas. A building has to be focused on the material strength. It's got to be aesthetic. It's got to look beautiful. It's got to be sustainable, and it's got to be livable. So there are different movements in architecture where people have talked about the idea that form ever follows function. So this is Louis Sullivan, who said, form ever follows function, is a functionalist dimension of architecture. Architecture cannot exist, cannot define itself per se. It's got to have a function for it. It's got to be utilitarian. And the other school of thought is minimalism. Less is more. Adolf Loos and Mies Vonder Rohe, where they said that a building has to focus on its utility. Minimalism, less components. Unity of design has to be the focus. You can't have multiple dimensions and multiple styles in a particular building. And there is the idea of minimalism. Then the idea of Art Deco to Art Nouveau movement emanated, where a bit of tapestry, bit of design-oriented dimensions, details were given importance. The arts and crafts movement. Then came about the contemporary architecture of modern dimensions, where exposed concrete, glass, bricks were used. The brutalist design, again, is not brut, meaning in French, meaning raw. So undecorated forms is what brutalist architecture is all about. The Bauhaus designs of Germany and the Oriental designs from different parts of the world brought about this style dimensions to architecture. Japanese metabolism to the Russian constructivism to Indian Dravidian architecture has come a full circle. Shifting the focus of attention to architecture, architects in India, Le Corbusier, who designed the city of Chandigarh, whose idea of a modular man, equivalent to the Bigfoot and the Vitruvian man, pioneered the concept of a planned city. We have Charles Correa, whose book A Place in the Shade, talking about how a structure has to beautify a particular place and shouldn't be an obstruction, shouldn't be an eyesore, should be like a sculpture that's emanating from below. Niceties of architecture that we need to focus on. Architecture is also spilled out into the aspect of landscaping, into concrete potteries being placed alongside the buildings to add some bit of dimension to it. Architecture is also about gardening, it's about landscaping, about aquascaping, about the softscapes. It's an extended version of cityscapes. So what do you look for when you design a house, when you get to talk to an architect? What are the aspects you need to know? First of all, you need to get your plan right. If it's going to be a diet plan, the number of rooms you need, the space, and whether it's going to be a single wide-bodied structure or it's going to be a vertical structure. And you got to get your plan right. Second is the perspective and the elevation. You need to know how your building looks, the facade, the fascia, the frontage, whether it's got harmony, whether it looks good 360 degrees and from above. You got to have a walk-in video or walk-in perspective wherein you can get to see your height, the section drawing, the load-bearing structures, whether it's structurally compatible with the aesthetic part. And what are the materials going to be used? Are you going in for natural tiles or synthetic vitrified tiles? Are you going to go in for hardwood or wooden veneer or acrylic or PU paints? There are so many new age concepts that you need to be aware of while designing a house. What brand of material for the ceramic are you going to go in for? What kind of color palette, the ensemble of colors that your building is going to house? These are some of the aspects you need to look into. And what direction is your house facing? The Germanic principle Vastu, based on the Helios, is also important. Playing it safe so that you don't get the dirty utility part like the bath or the toilet into your southwest, northeast axis. And the 23-degree sun entry into your house. Because a house that's facing north would cut out the sun most of the time of the day. Whereas the western sun and the southwest sun is going to be really hot. And how about the ventilation? West-east ventilation is going to cool your buildings naturally. You've got to have ventilation, you've got to have doors and windows that are placed appropriately so that it could harvest the wind and the draught coming in from the western direction, the evenings especially. So, and the cost factor, you've got to have a test pit dug in 4 corners of your site to see whether structurally it's going to be expensive. Are you going to go for a different style? It's going to be 3-way slope with Spanish tiles, or it's going to be a contemporary form of architecture with cantilevered structures. That's going to be expensive because load-bearing structures are going to be many. And what's the kind of drainage system that you're going for? Are your wet areas going to be one side of the building so that it's much cheaper, so you don't have pipes running in? And where the hideous area is going to be covered and concealed. So these are the dimensions that you need to discuss with your architect and get your design like with apps like Pinterest. So architecture is an art form which has spilled over into science and it's there to stay. So we need to be abreast of latest developments in architecture with CAD, new age materials. Before I conclude, I would request you to hit the like, share, and subscribe. Also, the bell icon. Also, don't forget to comment in the comment section about your opinions and your views on my podcast so that we'll be back with more in the next coming episodes.